For what purpose does the gentleman seek recognition?
I rise in opposition to the amendment.
Gentleman's recognized.
I would like to yield 1.5 minutes to my colleague and good friend, Mr. Tiffany from Wisconsin.
Gentleman's recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in opposition to this amendment, but I want to talk about all the there isn't enough time to talk about all the crazy things in this bill, so I'm going to focus on the one provision I think that takes the cake and something that should have been put in this bill. The bill before us today, which I'm calling the Politician Enrichment Act, will force American taxpayers to fund partisan political ads. You heard that right, Mr. and Mrs. America. All those negative, mudslinging campaign ads you see on TV every election cycle, the ones you can't stand, well, now you have to pay for them too. In fact, you get to chip in $6 of your money for every $1 the politicians raise. How's that for the swamp taking care of its own? But wait, there's more. This new taxpayer-funded gravy train will expand a loophole in campaign finance law that is already big enough to drive a fully loaded Brinks truck through. Madam Speaker, thanks to a generous carve-out in federal law, members of Congress are able to funnel campaign contributions into their personal bank accounts by simply hiring their spouses as campaign consultants. In fact, one high-profile member of the body, this body, exploited this loophole to the tune of $2.8 million in the last election cycle. You think it's bad now, Joe and Jane taxpayer? Just wait until you see how bad it gets when you're paying for it. Madam Speaker, I filed an amendment with the Rules Committee to close this loophole, one based on, may I have 15 more seconds, please?
I yield 15 seconds.
Gentleman's recognized for 15 seconds.
One based on a bipartisan proposal introduced by Mr. Schiff and supported by Mr. Hoyer, Mr. Clyburn, and Speaker Pelosi in the 110th Congress. But the Rules Committee chose not to allow us to vote on that amendment today. I wonder why. I yield back.
Gentleman from Wisconsin.
I would like to yield 2 minutes to my colleague and good friend, Mr. Murphy from North Carolina.
Gentleman's recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in ardent opposition to H.R. 1, the alleged For the People Act. But before I do that, I just want to speak to the recent amendment submitted that would allow criminals, convicted felons in this country to vote. I've traveled around the world. I don't know any country in this world that allows criminals, convicted felons to vote. That is not keeping them from committing their crime. It's called punishment for their crime. And it's unconscionable to me that we're actually even debating some of these things that we debate on the floor now. The last election showed the Democrats' true goals for reform, a way to permanently federalize the state's elections away from Republicans. If someone would read the Constitution, it's a beautiful document. It talks about states making their own election law. This bill, if anything, should be referred to as the For the Politicians Act. Let's just look at the process before I lambast the policy. 183 amendments were submitted, yet only 56 were made in order. Of those 56, only 8 were allowed by Republican members. And thanks to the McGovern rule, Democrats are continually able to submit bills on the floor without a committee markup. It's called the democratic process, without a markup or a hearing. Policy-wise, things look just even worse. This massive bill provides taxpayer money to finance incumbents' campaigns. It curbs free speech, significantly increases federal bureaucracy and red tape, and creates the one-size-fits-all for the federal election system. Our founders purposely decentralized our election process to give states the authority to conduct smooth and open election day. Get the federal government out of state and local affairs. Not every precinct is equal or open to the same composition. Eastern North Carolina is not the same, thank God, as California, Portland, Oregon, or Manhattan. Furthermore, many of these changes were made without input of state and local leaders who have the best on-the-ground knowledge. May I allow for 30 more seconds?
An additional 30 seconds.
Several organizations oppose this bill, but not for many reasons. I urge my colleagues on both sides to oppose H.R. 1 and support the Republican alternative, the Save Democracy Act. This is about our elections. This is what makes the United States different from everywhere. If we allow fraud in our electoral process, this nation is lost. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady